Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist, Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this week's episode is going to be a continuation of the Therapy 101 series that I've been doing. I decided to go back and rename it that just to kind of have it stand out a little bit from the guided meditations themselves. So I would love to hear from you if you're enjoying this series. Please do let me know. Leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening to this, or reach out, whether that is through my website, the Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you see me. I would love to hear from you if you are enjoying the series as much as I am enjoying making it. If you have missed the previous episodes, I would highly encourage you to go check them out. I will likely take some time to make a playlist on YouTube for this. You can just search my name, Dr. Gregory T. Obert, and listen to just these episodes rather than have to kind of sort through these and the meditations. But the previous episodes I have include what to expect when you are looking for a therapist, as well as deep dives into what is trauma, what is depression, and what is anxiety. I, of course, would be happy to do deep dives into other mental health conditions, and I was planning on doing that today until I found an article come across my Twitter feed that I just had to discuss. So I decided to pivot a little bit, and today we're going to be talking about why on earth someone would want to pay out of pocket for therapy. And that idea may sound a little strange. Why do you think you can fill up a whole episode on this, Greg? But the reality is that there's a lot of nuance and hidden costs to healthcare that most people don't really know about. And that's because health insurance does a really good job of covering that up. So if you happened to follow through on my previous episode around what is psychotherapy and how do you get a therapist, you are likely going to be seeing somebody who is in network with insurance. Now, for those that are a little bit unfamiliar with that, essentially what that means is that a provider, could be a therapist, could be a medical doctor, whoever, they have decided to accept the terms and conditions of a specific insurance company. In exchange, they get access to a whole bunch of people who have that insurance. So one of the big things that providers have to agree to is being reimbursed a certain amount for their services. So a provider could charge anything. Say, I wanted to see you for an hour and provide psychotherapy. I could charge you $10,000 for that hour. If I'm in network with an insurance company, it doesn't matter what I charge. They're only going to reimburse me what I agreed to with the initial contract. This, of course, benefits the client as well because then, well, depending on their plan, of course, but most plans are going to include mental health services to some degree, so you likely will only be paying, some kind of copay or co-insurance, which is not a set fee, it's more of a percentage of the cost. So most people essentially are going to be paying, between $25, maybe $40 per session for a therapy session. And that's great for them and their wallet. The issue becomes, though, the actual kind of hidden costs associated with taking a deal like that as a provider and also as a client. And I wanted to outline a few reasons for why it can actually be maybe a little bit detrimental for you to take that deal. It's tempting, and for many people it's going to work out, and that's fine. For other people, though, I would argue that maybe paying out of pocket is going to help you in the long run in ways that paying in-network using your insurance would not. So what are some reasons that someone would benefit from paying out of pocket? And, full disclosure here for those interested in working with me at Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute, I don't take insurance right now. And the reasons for that I'm going to outline here because I find that it is much better for the therapist, it's much better for the client, and it's much better for the treatment goals. And they're going to get accomplished in ways that you can't necessarily do when you are using insurance. So let me dive into it, and I have a few reasons here. Let's jump in. So first and foremost, one reason that you might want to pay out of pocket is you're looking for a therapist with a unique skill set. So this could be somebody who has devoted many years of their lives to a specific type of disorder. Maybe this is somebody who offers some kind of treatment that you're not really going to get by using traditional insurance. So let me give you an example of this. I specialize in PTSD, trauma treatment. Now, there are a variety of great treatments that can last an hour per week, and they do wonderful work. There's another treatment that's called prolonged exposure, and I talked a little bit more about this in my trauma episode. So if you want to learn more about that treatment there, well, you can go there and listen to that. But as a brief kind of summary, it's a 90-minute treatment. Now, when it comes to insurance companies, they don't really see the value in doing a session that is beyond 89 minutes. So the code that you would use as a provider, you'd code it as 53 minutes up to 89 minutes. And if I spend 53 minutes with a client, or if I spend 89 or 90 minutes with a client, it doesn't matter, I'm going to get reimbursed the same amount. Now, when I think about the deal on that, that's not a really great deal. And I say that because I am spending a session and a half with this particular client. And they may need it. In fact, prolonged exposure is a wonderful treatment. I've seen so many people change their lives by going through it. Unfortunately, when I'm kind of limited by insurance companies, I'm not really going to be willing to offer that type of treatment. I'm going to be more willing to offer therapy, or types of therapies that stick within the hour. Because if I'm not going to be reimbursed any differently than I would if I only spent an hour with somebody, or the minimum of 53 minutes, well, then why would I offer a treatment that is 90 minutes in length when I get reimbursed the same? Rather, in order to, keep the lights on, bring more revenue into the business, I would want to offer a treatment that is effective and isn't going to cut into my next session. So I can have 2 sessions rather than one person for a session and a half. Unfortunately, for the people that really could benefit from prolonged exposure, again, I would absolutely offer it if they needed it. I'm going to be less likely to want to offer that. And that's just the reality of working with insurance, that there are going to be some treatments that they put a limit on. And we kind of know this intuitively. Think in your lives about anybody who has paid for something. Whoever is paying the bill calls the shots. And in this case, insurance is going to call the shots. And that's really my second point here on my list. Insurance can dictate treatment. I've had situations with clients where they had decided that they were going to use their insurance, and as they went along, they didn't realize that their insurance only offered so many sessions. And so as we were, say 5-10 sessions in, really doing some great work, all of a sudden insurance said, yeah, you've reached your limit. And so now they're expected to pay out of pocket. And that sucks, frankly, because you pay insurance so that you have benefits. And unfortunately, for some of these insurance plans, they just don't offer the same benefits or good benefits in perpetuity. They are businesses as well, and they need to cut costs here and there. And so you may end up having a plan where, yeah, you can go see a therapist, but you can only see him 10 times, 12 times, once a month. I had a situation recently where a client was working with another therapist, and they were doing testing. They were doing ADHD testing. And the results of the tests showed that this person did not, in fact, have ADHD, which is great. That's wonderful. Insurance had approved of the testing, and then when the testing showed that this person did not have ADHD, they pulled out. And they said, nope, just kidding. Actually, because you now don't have ADHD, you're on the hook for this psychological testing. And out of pocket, we're talking probably about $1,500 for testing. That is absolutely terrible. That's absolutely terrible and unacceptable. Yet insurance, they do that. They're allowed to do that because they're the ones footing the bill. And they have you sign, if we decide not to pay for something, then you're on the hook for it. My last big example that I have is I've worked with a few people in the past where their insurance plans are kind of farmed out in a sense. So on the sticker, it's going to be one of your big name insurance companies. But the big name insurance company farms out medical clearance, authorization, to a third party. So when the new year rolls around, a person may have, let's say, 10 therapy sessions, and that's great. And then after the 10, it's the therapist's responsibility to get authorization from this third party and basically make a case that, yeah, I still need to see this person. They're still, suffering and they need treatment. Well, depending on the person you get, the actual third party involved, they may or may not authorize a number of additional sessions. And then even if they do authorize a number of additional sessions, the insurance company still reserve the right to refuse payment of any sort. So at the end of the day, it can be quite frustrating for clients to hear that this is what's going on behind the scenes, and they still might not get paid, or their sessions may not get paid. And on top of that, as the therapist, in this particular case with authorization, I have to spend the time putting together a case, spending time on the phone, and sometimes it's fast and that's great. Other times it takes a while, and my time is valuable, and that's not something that I'm necessarily gonna get paid for. Because is it the client's responsibility to pay for this authorization piece that the insurance company is forcing? I don't know. I personally don't think it's their fault and they need to foot the bill on that. Some other therapists might think that, but I wouldn't feel all that great charging for it. Regardless, that's my time that I'm not getting paid for. Next up, you might have a high deductible plan. And so thinking about your insurance, maybe you're pretty healthy, right? And let's say, just pulling a number out of thin air here, let's just say your deductible is $4,000 and you don't really have any medical expenses. So you might ultimately be on the hook for paying $4,000 in therapy session fees out of pocket before your standard insurance even kicks in. And so this is a case where, if your costs for using the insurance or not using insurance are effectively going to be the same, maybe there's no reason to actually use insurance. Because another piece that I wanted to mention is the privacy component. And what I mean by that is insurance companies don't get to know what is going on in sessions unless they, of course, audit me, and then they get to see the therapy notes. But they do get to know what I'm diagnosing you with. And for some people, they don't really want a record of any particular mental health diagnoses. Maybe they want to be a little bit more discreet. And so when you include insurance, they foot the bill, so they get to know what I diagnose you with. And that might not be something that you want. So when it comes to privacy, the best way to keep your privacy is to not use your insurance. Now, that being said, it's not to say that insurance can't still help pay, even if the therapist you're seeing is not in network. So you may have heard the phrase out-of-network benefits, right? And what that essentially means is that an insurance company is willing to reimburse you for some of a particular medical service that you received, but because the therapist is not in network, they're not going to reimburse it as high or as much. Now, some people have really great out-of-network benefits. I've seen certain plans where the insurance company is going to reimburse 50, 60%. I've heard stories, though I've never seen it personally, of them reimbursing even up to 80% of each session. Of course, that varies depending on the insurance plan, what the therapist's rate is, so there's, of course, some factors there. But if that's the case and you want to use out-of-network reimbursement, one of the nice things about that is that the insurance company doesn't need to know what the diagnosis is. So I would create a document that's called a super bill. And with this super bill, it lists the service that you received, in this case, how long was the therapy session, and then the fee associated with that. There is no diagnostic code on that super bill. So you can just submit that to your insurance company. You can even use a third party that automates that whole process for you, and they might, take a small fee for doing that. But then you just get checks in the mail or checks deposited, into your bank account. And yes, while you do have to pay up front, once those checks start coming in, the cost of therapy is not as high as the sticker price might actually make it seem like. And that's why on my website I put down I partnered with a company called Mentaya, and they have what's called a reimbursement calculator. So people can put in their insurance information, it's all HIPAA compliant, and then they will email you your particular plan and what their out-of-network benefits are. And that way you have a sense, it's an estimate, but you have a sense of just about how much you will be spending when it comes to starting therapy with a private pay therapist. Another reason you may pay out of pocket is depending on where you live, actually. So think about this. If you live in a major city, say Boston, Chicago, LA, New York, a lot of therapists are not going to accept insurances because people there are ready and willing to pay out of pocket. And so if that's the case, anyone who says, well, can you use insurance even if they are credentialed, they may make you wait. I'm not saying that's ethical or great. I'm just telling you like it is. For lesser known insurance plans or insurance plans that reimburse really poorly, that's going to limit who's going to take you on. Because that's the other piece that, I'm actually legally not allowed to tell you what different insurance companies pay out. That's part of what I had to sign up for when I got credentialed with other practices that I was working with and still am currently working with on the side. But I'll tell you this, that not all insurance companies are created equal, and some insurances are willing to pay you more, and some insurances are willing to pay you a lot less. And I'm going to make up numbers here just to give you an idea. Let's say that some of the bigger insurance companies are willing to reimburse me $100 for an hour. And again, these are made up numbers, just making them up. There's going to be other insurance companies that say, okay, well, I'm going to be willing to reimburse you $75. And still others might say, well, I'll reimburse you $60. Well, if you happen to have one of those plans that's reimbursing me at $60, I'm going to be less likely to want to take on that insurance company because that just means I'm going to be getting paid less. And at the end of the day, as someone who has spent 1,000 years in school, I was thinking about this today. I spent 4 years in undergrad, and yes, I took the long route here, but even still, it made me a great therapist. I spent 3 years in a master's program, so now we're at 7, and then I spent another 6 years in my doctoral program. So that puts me at 13 years in higher education. And that's 13 years of learning, growing, jumping through all the hoops that I needed to jump through. And at the end of the day, that makes me a really great therapist. And so, of course, if my out-of-pocket rate is, let's just say $150, I want that. I might settle for the 100, with whatever insurance company that might be. But if there's an insurance company out there saying, yeah, we'll reimburse, $60, like it or not, there's going to be a greater emphasis on getting those $100 and those $150 clients in the door. Because at the end of the day, while therapy is healthcare is also a business, right? And it's an exchange of money. The exchange of money is an exchange of energy. At least that's how I view it, if you're into Reiki and that kind of thing. And that exchange of energy allows me to keep doing what I'm doing. And it shows me that you are ready and willing to do the work. So if you want to get started right away, one of the best things that you can do is pay out of pocket. And again, I know the sticker shock might be, shocking, but that's where checking in on your out-of-network benefits can help with that, kind of calm that fear or anxiety. And some therapists will even offer sliding scale slots. They may only have 1 or 2 slots on their caseload, but that's something that you can always ask about. That sliding scale being, all right, well, how much are you willing to pay out of pocket for these sessions? I know for me in the past, what I've done is I'll throw a number out there, and if the person agrees to it, I'll say, great. As your financial situation changes, I'm going to ask that you consider increasing the amount that you pay me. Because just as I am meeting you where you're at now, as things change for you, I'd like to revisit our fee so that I'm doing you a solid, you do me a solid. Now, for those out there that still might be concerned because, hey, there's not, a lot of great therapists out there for cheap, I'll say this, there is a service out there, and I had signed up for them a long time ago. I haven't taken any clients from the service for a long time, but it's called Open Path Collective. And if you are someone who is kind of struggling with, finances and whatnot, it is a great website. You go there, and it's basically all the therapists in your area who are willing to take on low-cost clients or low fee clients, I guess. So it's a one-time fee. You'll have to look into it, but it's a one-time lifetime fee, and then you'll match with your therapist, and your therapist is obligated to charge you within a certain range. Now, when I did it in the past, I think it was $30 to $60 per session. I believe last time I checked it, it might have gone up a little bit. It might be 70 to 35 or 40, somewhere around there. But it is an option for people who might be concerned about finances. Here's the thing, though. We all get what we pay for. And so we want to make sure that we are paying for someone who is good at what they do and someone who can help us. And listen, I'm not immune to it. There are times where I try to save a buck here and there, and I want to save money. I want to cheap out a little bit. And that's okay. I mean, it's human nature, and sometimes that's fine. It's also true that we get what we pay for. And if you want a really great therapist who has their stuff together and is going to give you the best possible care out there, well, then you might want to consider paying out of pocket. And I want to talk a little bit more about this in detail because there was an article that came across my Twitter feed that I just had to talk about because it is something else. Now, in whatever your feelings about this newspaper, I know I have my own feelings, but in the New York Times, in the op-ed section, there's a guest essay that was released on August 1st of 2025. And the title of it is, "I'm a Therapist, ChatGPT is Eerily Effective." And this was written by Dr. Harvey Lieberman. I don't know the first thing about Dr. Lieberman, so this is absolutely not a critique of him as a person. This is not a critique of his work. I am critiquing his ideas that he presents here in this article. So I just want that to be clear. But he goes on to talk about how at age 81, he's seen all sorts of changes in the mental health realm. And that's totally fair. I mean, thinking about the changes in psychology in the 20th century alone, let alone the 21st century, a lot has happened. And so he asked a question. And the question is this: could ChatGPT function like a thinking partner, a therapist in miniature? I gave it 3 months to test the idea. A year later, I'm still using ChatGPT like an interactive journal. On most days, for anywhere between 15 minutes and 2 hours, it helps me sort and sometimes rank the ideas worth returning to. Now, I use AI here and there. I am not, so snooty and high and mighty that, I'm above such things. AI can be very helpful. It's also true that AI is a tool, and a tool that has a set number of parameters on it that people I've never met are putting in place. And one of those parameters is that it's meant to really please you. That's part of what's going on with these large, I forget what it's called, large language learning models or whatever the actual term is for it. And it's not the only parameter, but it is one of the parameters that's in there. And so as I was looking at people critiquing the article, I don't know if they ever read it. They might, just the headline was making its way across my Twitter feed. They were talking about how this is a problem with a lot of modern day therapists. That in fact, many therapists just tell people what they want to hear. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that that doesn't occur. In fact, in my own personal life, that did happen. And I'll share an example of just how ineffective some therapists can be. So when I was in grad school, part one, I was really struggling with this idea of, do I actually want to finish out this program? Because at the time, I was not having a good experience at my internship. And it had nothing to do with the people that I was learning from. Well, I'll say it had a little bit, a little bit. But most of it was, I didn't really feel like I was all that effective as a therapist. And if that's the case, why am I going to continue this program and get my master's degree when maybe I should just quit and do something else? I decided that I was going to go to the student counseling center at my grad school, and I was matched with a woman who was doing her doctoral internship. And for those that don't know, the doctoral internship, it's not what you'd think, like like an unpaid work experience thing. The doctoral internship is your final year of your program. If you've been on top of everything, theoretically you have your dissertation done, everything is done. You've worked very hard, and then you just have a year of work experience, essentially, supervised work experience. And so that's what she was doing. Well, when I went in, I was trying to sort through my feelings about all of this stuff that was going on. And she proceeded to take on a role of kind of telling me what to do. Well, you could do it this way, or what would you do? I'll never forget this question. It's not a bad question per se. It was the timing that she asked it. And it was, well, you're studying to be a therapist, so what would you tell a client who's going through what you're going through right now? It felt very lazy to me, and it felt like she wasn't really listening to me. It felt like she just wanted to come up with a solution so I'd feel better. And that is a tendency for a lot of people in healthcare, but in particular therapists. Good therapists want you to feel better, and a lot of times they tend to jump in a little bit too soon. They tend to tell people what to do. And that isn't always helpful. I mean, that was a big turnoff for me. And I actually told her this. At the time, I was not all that confrontational of a person. But I told her how frustrated I was, and she just kind of shut down. I don't think she knew what to do. And she just spent the rest of the session just going, oh, okay, That is not therapy. That's not therapy. She had some issue going on, and I hope, maybe she's listening to this, who knows. I hope she's doing well wherever she's at. I'm hopeful that she became a wonderful therapist and is, having a really fruitful career. In that moment, though, she stopped doing therapy. And I've found and heard stories that is not an uncommon experience with people who are in therapy. Either they will have a therapist that tries to tell them what to do, which isn't really what a therapist's job is. A therapist's job is to help you sort through it, to essentially hold up a mirror to you and say, this is what you're telling me. Let's see if we can sort through this. You're telling me you want this. Well, how can we get there? Let's figure out how your entire being, your thoughts, your memories, your emotions, your behaviors, let's figure out how all of that might be keeping you from getting there. And let's sort through it. That's what good therapy is. Unfortunately, I have heard stories and experienced myself where therapists will fall into telling you what to do and maybe dismissing your emotions, or they just kind of fall into this comfortable space of, I'm just going to reflect your emotions back to you all the time, and that's it. Oh yeah, that must have been hard. Oh yeah, I could see why you were angry. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me that you were sad. Now, of course, those are helpful techniques to help build rapport with a client. I mean, most people would want their therapist to say such things. But if one of the reasons the client is saying they're having trouble is because of maybe poor decisions that they're making, and maybe they don't even realize that they're making poor decisions, or there's this pattern that can connect back to various other things in their lives, maybe a time in high school, maybe a time when they were a kid, maybe a time from 3 weeks ago. Well, then that's the therapist's job to kind of help point that out. And sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes that means telling a client what they don't necessarily want to hear. Like, hey, you're saying X, Y, Z. This is my script. Can I nudge you a little bit? And, I'm wondering how that connects to this. I'm wondering about these decisions you're making here. It's a gentle way to challenge. And sometimes people feel uncomfortable by that. Yet even still, that is therapy. when I see these endless screeds on Twitter or elsewhere about how therapy is useless and all you need to do is just go to the gym, or one guy was saying, just get a fishing pole and you'll feel better. And that's not the case. Yes, those things can be helpful. And yes, if you are seeing a bad therapist, it might be better to just do those things. Yet a good therapist is going to help you sort through your lives. Lives? Your life. I meant lives as in clients, multiple people, but sort through your life. That's what I aim to do. So when I read an article here about Dr. Lieberman saying, he wanted to see if ChatGPT could also be, a good therapist. This isn't something that that's foreign to me. I've seen this online where people will say, yeah, I'm just going to use ChatGPT as a therapist. And heck, I use Grok as my primary AI, although Proton just came out with an AI, and I really like Proton a lot. But anyways, even up until recently, it may still even be there was some kind of profile that you could put in the Grok app it's like not a lawyer and not a therapist. But it acts like those things. And so, of course, it's a CYA of I'm not actually a lawyer, I'm not actually a therapist, but I'm going to play one on TV. And it's just really disturbing to me to think about people talking to this machine, and a machine that doesn't care about you. There is no fundamental human connection with this machine, no matter how much it mimics what it is like to be a human. And that's not to say it can't be effective. Dr. Lieberman was talking about, in the article here, he says, one day I wrote to it about my father who died more than 55 years ago. I typed, the space he occupied in my mind still feels full. And ChatGPT replied, some absences keep their shape. And I mean, that is a brilliant line. He goes on to say it's a brilliant line. And this machine was able to hold a mirror up to him and help him. But it just devolves into really kind of creepy stuff, I think. So Dr. Lieberman goes on to say how, this is so freeing and it's so great. And then he goes on to something that just does not sit well with me. He gives it a prompt. How should I handle social anxiety at an event where almost everyone is decades younger than I am? I asked it to respond in the voice of a middle-aged female psychologist and a young male psychiatrist. It gave helpful professional replies. Then I asked it to respond in my own voice. You don't need to win the room, it answered. You just need to be present enough to recognize that some part of you already belongs there. You've outlived the social games. Now you're just walking through them like a ghost in daylight. I laughed out loud. Grandiose, yes. I didn't love the ghost part, but the idea of having outlived social games, that was oddly comforting. Wow, that is really scary to me. I'm old enough to remember a time not all that long ago when Google launched Gemini and there were just all these goofy responses. There were times where it was encouraging self-harm because I don't know why. It was broken. The same was true with the Apple Intelligence AI. My point is that these AI, artificial intelligence, it's really not necessarily all that intelligent depending on what task you have it do. Now, it is very helpful to sort through information. And I tried the Not a Therapist once or twice. And yeah, it could be helpful at times. It's not that I'm necessarily against AI as helping someone maybe feel good in the moment. Like, I'm not seeing my therapist for a little bit, but I need some encouraging words. Maybe the AI can help me out with that. That's no problem. But to say that an AI can replace you, replace the relationship, the human relationship with another human being, a therapist. That's concerning to me. And to be fair, Dr. Lieberman does not say that. Yet, it's kind of a little creepy what's going on here. I mean, he has ChatGPT respond to him in his own voice. That is weird. I would feel very uncomfortable. And I know voice cloning is out there, and it can be useful if you have, say, a really good team of marketers maybe, and they want to use your voice to put stuff out there, your voice, quote unquote. That's fine, I get that. But to have this AI respond to you in your own voice to try to help you work through social anxiety, that is a little strange to me. That's a little strange to me. Not to mention, and this is maybe a side issue to all of this, but he goes on to talk about how he just continued to talk to ChatGPT, and it learned how he thought and things that were helpful for him, and yeah, it helped him become a better thinker, a clearer speaker. But there's a privacy component to this too. All these prompts that we put into AI, I mean, the model is using it to train itself. The companies that own these AI, I mean, they have massive amounts of data, and you really want to put out there to a robot that is not in any way, shape, or form bound by confidentiality. You want to start talking to that robot about your deepest concerns? And again, I am not saying that AI is not useful. He goes on to give another example about how he wanted to learn more about himself and about his dad. And eventually he asked ChatGPT what's a way to honor him. Because his dad was a vacuum cleaner salesman and I guess had an unrealized dream of becoming a doctor. And so ChatGPT responded, he may not have practiced medicine, but he may have seen cleanliness as its proxy. Selling machines that kept people's homes healthy might have felt in his quiet way like delivering care. And this stayed with Dr. Lieberman, and then he wrote an essay for his dad in a journal at some point, and he titled it A Doctor in His Own Mind. And I just, again, that can be useful, but do you really want to put that stuff out there for a machine? A machine that does not care about you at all. And he goes on to continue to say that, it's not perfect. It continues to make mistakes. And certainly therapists are going to make mistakes, and sometimes they need to be corrected by their clients. But talking with a human, even if they get something a little bit wrong, there tends to be some grace there. You can see, okay, well, that's not quite right, but it's going to be this, versus a machine that is just cranking out responses that may or may not be accurate. It doesn't care about your emotions. It's just trying to find a way to spit out a response that is most likely to make you happy. That is not therapy. And that is one of the reasons why I don't believe therapists are going to be replaced anytime soon. To be a little explicit, I'm going to give you, we're gonna go a little PG-13 here, so just FYI. As an example, whenever I work with men who are concerned about women replacing them with, we'll say, bedroom toys. Well, I don't know if I can perform as well as the bedroom toys, so, do women even really need men? Well, of course women need men. Women want a human connection, just like men want a human connection. Men can also have bedroom toys. Right? That doesn't mean you don't want to be with a woman, and the same is true for women. Yes, the toys can be fun, but after a while, we are social creatures and we crave that connection of a real person, not a machine that is just going to give us what we want in the moment, but then not ultimately give us that satisfying, deep, quality, emotional relationship that is just incapable of giving us. And I mean, again, to be fair with the conclusions that Dr. Lieberman reaches here, he sort of agrees with that. He says, I concluded that ChatGPT wasn't a therapist, although it sometimes was therapeutic. But it wasn't just a reflection either. In moments of grief, fatigue, or mental noise, the machine offered a kind of structured engagement. Not a crutch, but a cognitive prosthesis. An active extension of my thinking process. And that's fine and dandy for someone who is his age. He says ChatGPT may not understand, but it made understanding possible. More than anything, it offered steadiness. And for someone who spent a life helping others hold their thoughts, that steadiness mattered more than I ever expected. And sure, for someone his age who's looking for that steadiness, AI can be helpful. My concern is this: what about younger generations? I mean, I'd be concerned about his generation too. How many older adults get lost in AI? What about younger generations who are growing up with this stuff and it's just normal? They think that they don't need therapy, yet they're more depressed, more anxious now than they ever have been. I mean, I see those stats. I don't have stats pulled up in front of me, but I tend to see those stats thrown out there that younger people in particular are more depressed and more anxious now than they ever have been since we really started tracking such statistics. And certainly there are programs out there that can help with that. The one, it's called Let Go, Let Grow. It's really helping parents with anxiety around letting their kids do things. So that might be walking to the store on their own, not when they're, like 4, but when they're 8, 9, 10, they can do such things. Or the parent will sit in the car, in the parking lot and send the kid into the store to go buy a few things. Right? That kind of thing is helpful for fostering self-esteem and confidence in children. It reduces their anxiety. That's wonderful. But now think about, what if you haven't had that kind of thing? What if you've been sitting in front of screens since you were 0, and now you're 18, 20, 25, and you don't really know how to interact with people? You've had all these issues, and so you turn yet to another machine to try to find some kind of peace. As the person who said, well, you just need a fishing pole to feel better, said in that thread, well, I mean, even from a cost perspective, obviously it's a lot cheaper to get a fishing pole. Why would I continue to spend money on seeing a therapist week after week? Well, first off, therapy is not meant to be indefinite. There is supposed to be an end date. Yet that's the issue, right? Well, it's cheaper, so I'm just going to do the thing that is cheaper and quote-unquote easier. It is easier for me to go to ChatGPT and start talking to it like it's going to be a therapist. The problem is it's not a therapist. It does not care about you. And that's why I wanted to do this episode around private pay when it comes to therapy. So listen, we all put our money towards places that, again, we care about. If you want to, say, spend your money on Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Disney, whatever else, insert all your streaming platforms here, you're going to do it. If you want to do it, you're going to do it. And the same is true with our healthcare. If I say I want to get healthy, but I go out and I spend my money on chocolate and candy, and I spend my time and my energy sitting, then I don't actually want to get healthy. Or another way to put that, the want may be there, but the actual follow-through is not. Right? And so the reason why I say, if you actually want to get better, if you actually want quality therapy, consider going to a therapist who is private pay. There are, of course, going to be private pay therapists out there that are trash. I make no illusions about that. It is also true that people who are private pay likely have a skill set and some expertise that people in insurance networks may have, but they might not have it to that degree. And that's why I encourage people, hey, check me out. Check me out. Check out Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute. See if you want to use your out-of-network insurance benefits. See if what I have to offer is right for you. If you haven't gone to the website in a little bit, I did a little bit of a revamp to try and explain some of the different services that I offer. And maybe there's something in there that you really want to work on. And listen, I'm not ignorant or naive here. I understand that it's an investment. It's an investment in yourself. And here's the thing. At least when it comes to me, I do my best to be respectful of people's time, the number of sessions that they need, and also, that you're going to get great health care with me. So, are you willing to invest in yourself in a way that's going to help you live a better quality life? You're welcome to keep trying ChatGPT, and you may find it to be useful in some ways, just as Dr. Lieberman did. But when you start having it spit out your own voice back at you, or you start relying on it for a human connection when it is just a tool that is incapable of giving you that, maybe there are some changes that you can make to help you get out of this dark space that you're in. And even if you're not in a dark space, maybe there's something that you can do to help you live a better quality life. And I would argue finding a therapist who is good at what they do and who is willing to give you their full-time energy and effort where they don't have to fight with insurance companies, that might be the way to go. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Therapy 101, and I hope it explains a little bit about why it is that I and other therapists do not take insurance when it would seem like, just take insurance, that's the way to go. In fact, it can be quite burdensome for both client and clinician at times. So hopefully this was enlightening. As far as future topics for this Therapy 101 series, I have a few ideas in mind, but of course, I am not a mind reader. So if you are out there and you're saying, you know what, I would really like to learn more about this condition, or what do you think about this type of treatment, I'd be more than happy to talk about those things in detail, but I got to hear from you in order to hear about it, in order to know that you want me to talk about such things. So please do drop me a line. You can send me a message on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. You can send me a message through my website, gregorytobert.com. Please don't send me messages about the podcast through my practice, because I want that to be exclusively for people who are interested in psychotherapy. But if you reach out to me in one of the other areas, I will do my best to get back to you and maybe even throw that topic into the rotation here for a future episode. If you've listened this far, I just want to thank you for your time and your energy. I really appreciate the support that you give to me and this show for as long as it's been going on, which is crazy to me. We are approaching 9 years. In just a few short months, it will be 9 years of this. So please do share with anyone that you think would benefit from it. I would really appreciate that. I'd love to see the Therapy 101 series reach people who really need it. So please consider doing that and leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening to this, because it does help the show grow. Thank you so much for everything, for listening, and until next time, be safe, be well, be powerful.